Welcome to the reality show, day 151 of the war in Israel. I am joined by Jonathan, Marco, Richard. Hey guys, how's everybody doing?
Good for the moment. Yes,
Yeah,
good.
I was gonna say if it's good now, it's not gonna be good soon, although you've seen this. Yeah, last week we did an episode of the Daily Objective about Owen Jones, and in preparation for that, I watched a lot of his stuff, and it's difficult, to um, say about one video that's particularly despicable, but he somehow managed it. And this video, if you want to go watch it, although we're going to play a lot of it, it's titled Gaza's Women Abandoned by So-Called Feminists with Maryam Aldossari, the woman who we will see joined him. Should we jump right in and start watching the video? Guys, we're going to watch it at 1.25 speed, so pay attention. Owen Jones talks not slowly, but you get enough of the essence of it. Daniel, let's go.
Over 19 weeks of carnage, over 36,000 Palestinians have now suffered violent deaths at the hands of Israeli weapons. And once you include that is those buried under the rubble, who I'm afraid to say, of course, must be considered dead. Now, of course, that means women and girls, boys and men. All Palestinians, whoever they are, of course, have suffered horrors beyond most of our imaginations. But the impact of such military onslaughts always have profound gendered implications. Most of those who have been killed are women and children. There are two mothers dying every hour. There are 50,000 or so pregnant women in Gaza without healthcare now, which is the system has been essentially destroyed. There are women in labour having C-sections without anaesthetic. There are babies being taken from the bodies of their mothers who've been killed. There are women using scraps of Tenter's period products. There are breastfeeding mothers at risk of terrible health complications. We really could go on. Yeah. And then there are now reports from the United Nations about Palestinian women being sexually abused and raped by...
All right. Let's pause it there. I think we can pause it after each sentence. If we had unlimited time, we could talk about pretty much every word that comes out of this despicable human being's mouth. And if you want to see despicable, just wait until she starts talking as well. But yeah, he starts with Hamas numbers. I think those may have been overblown, even like more than, I don't think Hamas's numbers were 36,000 13 days ago, but I don't follow them that closely. But then, of course, he doesn't say these are Hamas numbers, and then he actually says it's higher because the people buried under the rubble. So this is what Owen Jones takes and presents as absolute fact is Hamas numbers. Marco.
Oh, good God. Yeah, well, first of all, I really hate the way he kind of slips in stupid things like, oh, day 19, or people are under the rubble, 36 billion children and boys killed. It's like, I mean, this kind of so-called journalism is really, really annoying. To be honest, we haven't got to reduce a bit yet, so I'll hold my my judgment for later on.
Yeah, later in the video, he says at least once or twice, is this a teachable moment? Well, yes, this is a teachable moment. This is a teachable moment in how to use propaganda unquestioningly, how to repeat every number you've ever heard, and never to point out that it comes from Hamas themselves, even though you point out later on in the video that some information comes from claims by the IDF, but you never once make that statement when it comes to this. And of course, we're going to get into this, I'm sure, but this is also a teachable moment in how to see the world through an intersectionality lens and what contortions and contradictions you need to evade in order to have that hang together, even in your own head, for the duration of the 27 minutes of pain that this episode really amounts to. And of course, overall, it's going to be a giant exercise in whataboutism. So look out for that. It's coming up.
Jonathan.
I like how he just says has gendered implications as well, as if war, both women and men are dying, as if it's like a very nuanced, interesting thing to say. this is my first encounter with this individual. Every time you mentioned Owen Jones, I thought you were talking about Alex Jones, and it's interesting. They're both conspiracy theories, aren't they? But let's keep watching.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying when we did after we did the Owen Jones episode, that people have mentioned to me he's like Alex Jones, and I think he's more like Glenn Beck. Now, I'm not going to go into the explanation of why, but you can watch it on the reality show from, I think it was last Monday. Yeah, there's a thing here also about how he goes into this is just the beginning, but he goes into the sexual assault that happens, and of course immediately there's something very cynical about doing a video like this and talking about the sexual assault that has been reported there, and not talking about what was a part of the Palestinian people's attack on Israel on October 7th. Rape was not something that somebody did, on the side while they were supposed to just be, killing Jews. This was a part of the attack. This is a part of what the Palestinian people are. So that's who he defends. By the way, he's done the same recently with talking about violations of the rights of LGBTQ plus people in Israel. I don't know if that requires a whole episode, but to me, the idea, I think Owen Jones is to the gay community kind of what Norman Finkelstein is to the Jewish community. He because he is gay, he can say those kinds of things and side with with people who slaughter people for being gay, and say that they're victims. There are other victims, Israel, where the only country in the Middle East where gay rights are protected, is violating the rights of gay people. So, all right. Anyway.
Yeah, later, by the way, he says by the end, I don't think we'll reach that, but he says that Israel is anti-LGBT because it must have killed over 1,000 gay people because they consist of 10% of the population. So Israel is much worse against gay people than Gaza. And he used the word murder. He said they murdered LGBT. Yeah.
Which the logic of that, of Israel is bombing. First of all, if you say, which Owen Jones does frequently, say Israel is bombing Palestinians indiscriminately, then how is it anti-gay? It's one or the other. But anyway, let's continue. We haven't heard enough of these guys, and we haven't heard Maryam yet.
By Israeli soldiers. Now, I'm really delighted and honored actually to be joined by Maryam Aldossari, who is an academic who wrote a really brilliant piece back in early January for Al Jazeera, which is entitled "For Feminists, Silence in Gaza is no longer an option." And I think a lot of people were quite relieved when this was said, given the horrific consequences for women in Gaza. And it must be said, intersectional feminists really have been at the forefront of speaking out against Israel's onslaught. This should not be seen as some sort of, this discussion is not an attack on feminists. I'm speaking to a feminist. It's about how some who have partly called themselves feminists who haven't spoken out, the silence about Palestinian women, which must end. So thank you for joining us, and it's an honor to have you.
Thank you so much, Owen, for having me. And similar to you, I share the same frustration with the whole situation, how our government is reacting, but also because I'm a feminist, I'm quite disappointed with the feminist movement in general. But again, as you said, it's not all feminists. A lot of feminists is marching every week. And when I talk about certain feminists, the most famous, well-known feminists who are supposed to fight against violence and made a career of saying that they are fighting against violence for women and children. And what you mentioned, the report is quite frustrating and upsetting, but it's quite important to point out this is not new. For 75 years, women in Palestine have been raped, sexually assaulted, and it's never made it to the permanent or mainstream media. And so to dismiss the 75 years and just be shocked by a small report that happened now, it's not new. There is thousands of women have reported that they've been assaulted by the soldiers through investigation, and it's never made it to the mainstream media. But also the reaction of mainstream media.
she's 75 years of rape of Israel, of Palestinian women. Where's the proof? Where's the evidence? She just says it. It's
it's interesting that
just
she
one
chose.
thing, Razi, before this is important. It's good that he mentioned she writes for Al Jazeera, and she's a teacher in the Royal Holloway University of London. So this woman teaches English students. And okay, Razi, go ahead.
Yeah, by the way, this woman's name is Maryam Aldossari, Owen. You got her last name wrong, which is pretty racist if you ask me. And yeah, she wrote for that well-known feminist media outlet, Al Jazeera, about the 75 years that it's interesting that she chose 75 years. If you ask the experts in international law and so on, the occupation isn't the very existence of the state of Israel, but 75 years is how long Israel has existed. So she doesn't start the count, nor does Owen, by the way, at 1967 when the Arabs failed to surprise Israel and ended up losing some territories, including the Gaza Strip and Judea and Samaria on the west bank of the Jordan River. Anyway, Marco?
I mean, to be honest, the issue for women in the area so-called Palestine is that they come from Islamic background, and the fact that they come from Islamic background determines their own oppression. As I said before, they actually wear the symbol of their own oppression. And although here in the West, women can choose to wear the burqa or whatever the other stuff they wear, over there they haven't got a choice. If they don't wear them, we've seen it in Iran, they die. So the oppression of the women comes from a different angle. It's not just 75 years of it, but it's probably 1,400 years or whatever. Also, she's called about feminism. Well, feminism is about as a laughable concept as independence or Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. To be honest, it's just effectively somebody wants the right to infringe the rights of somebody else. So already somebody talks, I'm a feminist in this day and age, and evading the fact that women are oppressed by the religion of Islam. Just look here in Britain, for example. Which other establishment would they accept having two different entrances, one for women and one for men? Imagine if a cinema had that, what kind of riots we would have in the streets. By the mosque, it's acceptable. They are less valuable human being, but feminism doesn't apply in this particular case. It's only right that women are treated exactly like men, because although the biological difference is there, conceptually as human beings, they're exactly the same as men. So that's nobody ever disputes this. But to then make up this make-believe world, well, they're oppressed by Israel and not by the culture where they live. Come on, Owen.
I think by the end of this piece, I wasn't sure what a feminist was anymore, because apparently there's a whole bunch of categories of feminists that I didn't even know about. I keep stressing throughout this that it's not intersectional feminists that we're blaming here, that according to Owen Jones and his interviewee, because presumably all I can get out of this is that because it's got the word intersectional in it, that makes it good. Because he also then goes on to criticize, or they jointly go on to criticize imperial feminists with imperial tendencies, and also this unspoken category of a particular brand of feminists who they don't actually name. They just refer to them as a particular brand. I don't know whether that means Jewish. It may mean Jewish. It's perfectly possible. But certainly it means the following. It means the self-career building, self-interested people. Those are by definition bad because they got the word self in them, and they're clearly interested in their own careers. But apparently the intersectional feminists are at the forefront of calling out the Israelis. But I don't know that there's an intersectional feminists that have been at the forefront of calling out the Palestinians or Islam, as Marco mentioned there.
Yeah, all right, let's
just one more thing about this lady. So this lady wrote a piece for Al Jazeera and claiming about the rape, and there's a silence, and she and Mr. Jones are surprised that there's silence. Maybe there's silence because it's not real. Are we just supposed to take her because she wrote an article for Al Jazeera and she's a doctor and she speaks in intersectionality language? We are supposed to just believe her? He doesn't ask her any questions to make it, you know, hard life for her. He just believes everything she says. So I would view the rest of it from the perspective of, this is propaganda. This is just, there's no journalism here, and it's really annoying. Okay, let's go.
I just want to quickly thank Bonnie for the super chat. Bonnie said we could keep it going for their hard work. Thank you. That's a reference to the super chat marathon in today's episode of the Daily Objective. Thank you, Mary Aline, as well, for the super chat. Yeah. So what was interesting here was there was a UN report that said that the two women were raped by Israeli troops, and I think we talked about this last week. If that is the case, that's going to be investigated, and those soldiers are going to pay price. They're going to go to prison, because that's how it works in Israel. In Israel, you go to prison for rape. If you're a Palestinian and you rape a Jew, you get money from the government. You get a martyrs fund. You get basically a reward. So that is the difference in culture. And I think probably the most disgusting part of this video is when they actually do bring up what happened to Israeli women, and I think that's coming up, if not in this next segment, then very soon. So we can continue.
Media is quite not surprising, since the Israeli and Palestine, and I will not call it Israeli and Hamas war because it's against Palestinian people, and still you see in the news saying Israeli and Hamas. And there is a main story, a very upsetting story that showed that Israel is the shining example of civilization, while Palestine needs civilization and need to be saved from Hamas. And the misrepresentation of the Arab community in that mainstream media, to the extent that they call them the kingdom of animals, which is extremely racist and misleading. But that's also not shocking. We know how is the media have been presenting, and you have some websites or newspaper who have been extremely played a major role in this propaganda machine of producing this image. What's quite shocking that feminism also adopt those values and reproduce them and manifest it in the media and all those articles. So you see, for example, since the October attack happened, even before the IDF presented the case of rape of Israeli women, they just jump in it. Sympathy was only to Israeli women, and there is no extended sympathy for Palestinian women. And I read most of the article have been published about rapes of Israeli women. And don't get me wrong, I'm a feminist. I will always believe rape, even if the evidence was presented.
You're muted, Razi.
Daniel, can you play just a couple more seconds and then pause?
Presented by IDF, and there was no actually witnesses or the victims speaking themselves, I will still believe the woman. But why this?
All right, yeah. You guys talk. I will say words that maybe if I wait for a bit, I won't say. And I'm not calling on anybody. Whoever can speak politely after hearing that, please go ahead.
Well, this distinction that they make between Palestinian and Hamas, for example, Palestinian is a word they'll only use, these two, when it comes to claiming their victims. And then they'll only use the word Hamas when there's irrefutable evidence that's in their mind. It always seems to be refutable when it comes to what occurred on October 7th. But the rest of the time, but Israeli is a word that can be used in any circumstance and refers constantly to to one side in the way they're posing it in this particular example. I think one thing I wanted to mention earlier when you were talking about the LGBT side of things, I think at one point Owen says that, as an aside, that he mentions that Gaza is not a great place to be gay. Which is, yes, yeah, again, we know this to be true. But the point that they keep making on this subject is that Israel is not intent on advancing LGBT rights. They're just using this issue as a weapon. They don't care about gay people, but apparently they don't seem to recognize that the Palestinians don't care about gay people either. That's definitely avoided when analyzing this.
Which is a bit unusual because, according to them, Gaza is such a civilized place where your citizens go out about raping and murdering thousands of people. Yeah, that's very civilized, isn't it? I mean, how can you even suggest something like that? How can you ignore the extent of the events? I mean, and even getting to the point to say, I will believe a woman even if the proof comes from the IDF. It's like the IDF will lie, obviously. We know that everything linked to Israel is a lie. And therefore, I'm a feminist, so on this occasion, I'll break the rules. The kind of evasion of these two people is quite enormous, really. And to be honest, they haven't made a single intellectual point. They will not make it between the beginning and the end. In a way, is this what we're up against? Is this all the other side has got? Because frankly, it's pretty laughable. I can't believe it. I mean, if we're losing against these guys, then probably we deserve to be wiped out, because there is nothing behind apart from suggestion, theories, and victimism behind all this. It's incredible that people like this can actually make any headway. All you need to do nowadays just show a couple of pictures and tell a couple of stories, and everybody would. If it's sad enough, people will believe you one day. I mean, it's laughable.
That's one of the things that she says in her article repeatedly. In fact, it comes almost as the conclusion of the article. She says, look at the images, using that picture as an argument form of making an intellectual point. And we know fully well from Peikoff's lecture on that exactly why that is not the way to understand even the longer range issues involved, let alone the principles behind them.
She said on the same sentence, she said that you need to have sympathy for her imaginary Palestinian women who have been raped, on the same sentence where she mentions the victims of October 7th, which has been widely documented. There are so many victims, and she says it within the same sentence. And I think that really tells you everything about this Dr. Abdulasi Goebbels. She's just...
Yeah. What she said there was, I will always believe women, even if the evidence is coming from the IDF and there are no eyewitnesses. And, so these are statements that kind of taking apart in terms of, with the fact is easy, but there are some situations where all you should say to somebody is "fuck you." I mean, seriously, what a horrible human being. There are eyewitnesses, but so few of them because the witnesses were all murdered in the most brutal way by people who are, the people who Maryam Aldossari is an advocate of. So her savages murder people, and then she says, well, why aren't they speaking up?
Yeah, and I think she also said that why do Israeli women don't have sympathy for the Palestinian women? And really, why should they have any sympathy at all for these people after they raped and murdered and butchered, burned their babies in the oven? Why should they have any sympathy?
And the irony of the feminism point here, beyond, again, it is possible that the two women who claim they have been raped, we don't know that, and if those accusations are investigated and any soldiers are found guilty, they will pay for it rather than get paid for it. But if you want to have sympathy for Palestinian women, why not have it about how they live their life, in a under a regime and in a culture where women are not really considered full human beings. So everything about this is absolutely, as Apollo Zeus says in the chat, fucking sick. Cargo Crew says, Chank, George Galloway, I can hate. These other lightweights, including these two, don't deserve a second look. The thing is, these are mainstream people. This is mainstream culture. People buy into this. We have 86 live viewers right now, and I appreciate each and every one of you, including the couple of trolls in there. But Owen Jones talks, and hundreds of thousands of people watch, and hundreds of thousands of people read, and millions agree. So yes, you should, first of all, you should hate people who are despicable, even if they didn't have an audience. And I don't know that these people are, the Cenk is any more serious. Yeah, Marco.
Well, I just wanted to mention, if you, as you watch this interview, just bear in mind how they keep making a moral equivalence between the victim of October 7, the women and men raped during the attack on October 7, and the alleged victims on the Palestinian side. It's a continuous minimizing the impact of the Gazans' action on Israel, and also dressing it up as Israel, as Gaza is actually the victim he attacked out of the blue. We don't understand why, but also the undertone is effectively a conversation between two people who already decided that the facts are Israel bad, Gaza good, and it's exactly the kind of attitude that comes out from the report that came out today from the UN, where they found a reasonable series of arguments that make them think that perhaps, yes, there were rapes on October 7. I mean, this kind of attitude, by minimizing the victim of October 7 and trying to cover the action of Gaza and the Hamas people, i.e. the Gazans, who did what they did, is just so shallow. I mean, they're trying to, we're victims as well. Look at us, children under the rubble. Oh, my goodness me. Like, oh, get over it.
Yeah, and I think one of the arguments they're clearly making repeatedly is, why can't we have sympathy? Why can't we sympathize with all? That's the moral equivalence in its best light that they're trying to paint. They claim to be fighting for fairness and civilization for all, including those who committed the most barbarous acts, for which there's not only no eyewitnesses in many cases because they're dead, but there is eyewitnesses from some. There's also physical evidence and plenty of it as well, and all of it fully documented as against these cases, which are, from the evidence presented by them, is total hearsay, and it doesn't provide any balance at all. It's just an attempt to distract from October 7th.
Yeah, and the evidence, by the way, was there from the start. There's just more and more of it, and the report by the Israeli what's it called, Center for Rape Crisis came out a few weeks ago. This UN report came out almost 5 months to the day after the attack. I haven't seen anything yet from Owen Jones about it, but I'm sure that is forthcoming. Let's, Jonathan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think we need to touch on it. I think this is something particularly terrible in the sense that it's not only Holocaust denial, what they're doing there, but it's a reverse accusation. They're blaming the Jews for the Holocaust. That's what they're doing there. I don't think if there is even historical precedent for such kind of accusations towards.
I mean, so anti-Semitism is not a new thing, and it always comes with some explanation. There's always a reason. So now it's the Zionists, basically we hear from people like Owen Jones in the West, whether they're of the left or of the right, there's enough of them on both sides, unfortunately. We hear the kind of things that, my Arab friends tell me are prevalent in the Arab world, except in the Arab world, they use the word Jews, and here they use the word Zionist, but it is exactly the same, not in this particular video, but that is typically how people get away with anti-Semitism. All right, should we Should we play some more?
Sympathy didn't extend to Palestinian women. Why did you assume that they just need to be saved from Hamas and assume that they haven't been raped, haven't been sexually abused? The same bins that dropped all those articles, they didn't show any sympathy for Palestinian women, not even mentioning them in one sentence that the violence extended to Palestinian women. And that's what's, and I, as a feminist, I looked also at all the very famous, well-known feminists that I used to hold a huge respect for them, saying, see, there must be an outrage, there must be empathy that we all can drive from. And anyone who did that, I'm afraid they were disappointed by the silence from those feminists and feminist organization as well.
I mean, on that, just so people are clear about the United Nations report which has come out, and they write, we are particularly distressed by reports that Palestinian women and girls in detention have also been subjected to multiple forms of sexual assault. After being stripped naked and searched by male Israeli army officers, at least 2 female Palestinian detainees were reportedly raped, while others were reportedly threatened with rape and sexual violence. They also noted that photos of female detainees in degrading circumstances were reportedly taken by the Israeli army and uploaded online. Now,
I don't know where to start, but I'll start from the last point. The word reportedly is a beautiful word. Photos of female detainees were taken and reportedly posted online. Reportedly could be any asshole on Twitter tweeting about it, and Owen Jones can use the word reportedly, like we mentioned Owen Jones months ago when the word genocide was used a bit less by these people. Now they can't finish a sentence without fitting it in there somewhere. And he said something like, well, don't take my word for it. Here's a UN expert on genocide saying it's genocide. Of course, the UN is an organization that pretty much exists for the purpose of telling the world how evil Israel is. So having them call Israel genocide is what Israel is doing genocide is neither here nor there. But so again, he goes through a bunch of things. Female detainees stripped naked and searched. Sounds perfectly legitimate to me if it hasn't happened. Yeah, you did something on October 7th. You know, it's going to be an uncomfortable few months for you. That's how it is. You did something, or you sat there and let it happen. Well, tough shit. Now, even before that, she said something about, they didn't have sympathy. They, feminists and so on, didn't have sympathy for Palestinians. I looked at feminists I respect and so on. We're talking here about Owen Jones and Maryam Aldossari. We are naming who we're talking about. They don't name anybody. They're talking about some feminists out there. What I've heard from feminists is silence on what we know was incidents of rape, mass rape by the Palestinian people in every single place that they got to on October 7th, which, of course, Maryam Aldossari denies while saying she believes in saying that, it's the IDF reported and there's no eyewitnesses. So again, we could pick apart, if this was a 10-hour show, we could pick apart each sentence. We're going to pick them apart in bulk.
Yeah, but this bit here is exactly the pits of it. It's exactly why, to be honest, I've never really watched a talk with the guy there, Jonesy. But I can't believe it that it would be so callous to equate the so-called alleged effectively shaming of a couple of criminal women from Gaza and compare it to the murder of women and rape of women during October 7th. That's the kind of equivalency shows what kind of rotten human being that guy is. Nobody could make a comparison because, well, if somebody is strip search, it's not really the same as being murdered and raped, or actually murdered by a rape. It's just, I can't believe it that a human being would actually say something like that under the pretense or looking like somebody who cares about humanity. These guys are monsters.
And throughout this episode, they keep changing the parameters. He's referred there to the report of people being strip searched. And of course, we know that people have suicide bombs on them and all that kind of stuff. And there's good concealed weapons. And there's a good reason for doing that. But in the course of this, not only have we got the accusation of 75 years of rape, but at one point he says Palestinian women and children have been raped. Yeah, the word children has been added in there by one of these two in the course of it. I think they've just projected from the fact that children were treated that way on October 7th by Hamas, by those Palestinians who went across the border and did those heinous acts on that day. There's a couple of lines I just wanted to read out, if I may, just from The Cult of Moral Greyness, because this really nails what's going on in this particular one. This is the article by Rand. It says, observe how many people evade, rationalize, and drive their minds into a state of blind stupor in dread of discovering that those they deal with, their loved ones, in this case, the Palestinians whom they love so much, or friends or business associates or political rulers, are not merely mistaken, but evil. Observe that this dread leads them to sanction, to help, and to spread the very evil whose existence they fear to acknowledge. Now, that's exactly what we're seeing here. That's exactly what's going on. And it's unpleasant and unsettling to see.
Notice that everything they are accusing Israel of is what Palestine is guilty of. And this is exactly what I meant, that this is propaganda. It's just they're reversing everything. They make up these accusations, no evidence. And, it's all the Jews. It's all the Israelis. That they are the rapists. We are just the victims. What more can I say about this? It's just unbelievable.
Well, Kirsten said earlier in the chat, sounds like at most they were strip searched before detention for everybody's safety. Totally agree, Razi. Yeah, and Marco and Richard, you mentioned, there have been suicide bombers. There have been female suicide bombers that the Palestinian people have sent for decades. But of course, by this definition, many hundreds, if not thousands, of Palestinian men were also, they were strip searched or stripped as well at the beginning or earlier on in the war. We saw those images of when they were surrendering, they were told to strip to their underwear for the very reasonable, reason that often Palestinians will kill themselves if that means taking Jews along with them. So yeah, that is absolutely the right thing to do. And of course, again, the only real accusation that we hear here is that two women were allegedly raped, which, if it happened, is a horrible thing and will be dealt with.
And as you've pointed out, Razi, on a previous show, they also booby-trapped the dead bodies of Israelis. And that's an extent to which there's physical evidence.
Yeah, I was thinking as part of this episode whether or not we want to go. I mean, I have the report open, and whether or not we want to go into like great detail. It might come up, so I will tell people just to be aware. We did a whole episode of the Daily Objective, James Valiant and I, on it's titled The Palestinian Way. We read out some of that report. That is where you can find that. Let's play a bit more of this video.
These are very grave allegations, and I suppose the point you're making there is, very serious claims of sexual violence against Israeli women were made on 7th of October, which need to be clearly investigated and taken seriously. But people spoke about that very loudly, often in the context of supporting, I suppose, the onslaught against Gaza, which mostly then killed women and children. But if they're not speaking out about this, then what does that tell us? If they're prepared to speak out about those claims, which do need to be clearly, definitely investigated, why not this? What does that tell us?
I agree. But first, before I say that, I was looking at reports from 20 years ago. There was a report in United Nations Human Rights. There is a Human Rights Watch. There is even by Taslim, which is the Israeli Information Center of Human Rights.
Just briefly, I think what she was trying to say there is B'Tselem. And we've done 2 separate episodes about them and about the Palestinian propaganda machine in general, but that is a very important part of that propaganda machine when focused towards the West, where people still try to claim that they're not anti-Semites. In the Arab world, I don't think that's as necessary. They love B'Tselem because B'Tselem is those Jews that they can point out and say, look, even Israelis have said this in a report 20 years ago. Let's hear a bit more and hear what it is exactly that she says Israel did 20 years
in
ago.
the occupation territories. All of them mentioned that there is rape happening in the prison by Israeli soldiers. And when they dismiss all of this, and now again not speaking about it, it's very clear. It is the idea that we don't see the problem if you are not like us. And this is very embedded in the very imperial and colonization feminism. And we saw it for a long years in the history. And if you take, for example, the case of Mahsa Amini, the Iranian person who was killed because she wasn't wearing a proper hijab, that created a massive movement of feminists, especially in UK. They even, some organization, they went and cut their hairs in public in central London in a way of solidarity. And why this case, not Palestinian case? Because it fit the idea of liberation women from hijab, liberation, and bear in mind, I'm not even Muslim. Liberation of Muslim women from Muslim dominant value and saving them from men. And previously in the history, you saw these ideas of liberation women from brown men, basically. And you saw it justifying the war in Iraq, in Afghanistan, where it was justified partly because we are trying to save this woman from the dominant Muslim ideology in those countries.
So, by the way, Michelle says they love B'Tselem the same way they love Neturei Karta. Yeah, that's the token Orthodox Jews of the anti-Israel movement. Yeah, look. So first, she complains about why the case of the 2 women who were allegedly raped is not everything that is being talked about. Then she complains about how what she calls Western feminists, are protesting when it comes to Iranian women, and it's something about to do with brown women, which I'm not sure, or brown women being liberated from brown men, or brown women being liberated, Muslim women being liberated from Muslims, and that's what you care about. But if it's, Jews or white people, that's not an issue. So, yeah, she's objecting to the support for Iranians and Iranian women in their fight against true oppression similar to what women in Gaza who actually would want to have, if they want to have equal rights, that is not the place where they would have.
Yeah, and also where were her brand of feminism when there are other cases of white women being groomed for sex by Asian gangs of men or brown men that were oppressing white women? Where were the protests coming from? This kind of people who are now so horrified that these things is happening. You never hear them. You never hear them whinging about the Chinese and the Uyghur genocide, which is a proper genocide. You never hear them talk about effectively the genocide that Russia is committed on Ukraine by removing thousands of children from Ukraine and moving them to Russia. You never hear these people talking about other events which do not involve Israel. Funny that.
But apparently it's imperialist and colonialist to care about these women and to think we're somehow white saviors by showing them some attention when it comes to trying to liberate from the oppression of the Iranian regime, which by implication you're supporting if you think that's not an issue that should be celebrated when they do stand up against that kind of oppression. One of the things here that Jonathan mentioned at the start is the conspiracy theorist strain that runs through this. The idea that the media is silent. This means the media outside of Al Jazeera, of course. I think one point later in the interview, she makes the statement which had me spitting out my teeth, which was that the CNN is biased in favor of Israel. Because they're not mentioning these cases for which there's seemingly no evidence or no evidence presented by anyone, and there's some theory that there's a silent oppression of the truth because there's a concentration on the 1,200 people on October 7th and all the evidence that there is for those particular rapes and cases.
Even though Jones himself actually admits that CNN is talking about it. So he first whinges about nobody talks about it, but the CNN is talking about it not enough. Make up your mind, man.
Makes you wonder how they define truth, and if there is truth in her world of dialectic, endless variations of feminism that have endless battles against each other. And it's just, how can she tell what's even true or false with her philosophy, with her perspective on reality? She doesn't need facts, she doesn't need evidence. She just needs to know if it's a brown or a mocha or a white or black. That tells you all you need to know. That's not truth. That's not adherence to reality. That's just racism. And that's I think really why I called her Dr. Goebbels at the start. She really embraces that as a part of her feminist theory, this racism. I'm also thinking about what kind of disservice that is to Palestinian women. They're not talking about the true oppression that they are feeling, that they're experiencing in their entire life in Gaza, where they lack the very basic freedom that she enjoys in London. I don't know. I can imagine what will happen to a Gazan woman who refuses to wear the hijab. Not very good things. And especially for LGBT people as well as Jones, they don't care about the real problems of the Palestinian people. They just care about blaming Israel on the crimes of the Palestinians. It's really bewildering. My English is not good enough to come up with words to describe this.
Well, my English is good enough to come up with words, but I'd rather not say them because it's a family-friendly show. We started late. We're going to go a bit later. Ayn Rand Center UK members, my apologies. The Fountainhead Book Club will start a bit later than it usually does, but I do have a Fountainhead connection here. So Misbehavior says, I get the feeling he's dug in too deep and would lose all faith if he chooses reality. I think you all know the connection I'm thinking of, which is, sorry, this is a Fountainhead spoiler for people who haven't read it, but not a major one. There's that scene with Peter Keating where Rourke tells him, I'm not going to go into all the details, where he says, it's too late, Peter. I don't think it's too late. I think for Owen Jones to become a decent human being, that process is going to be so long and excruciating, and whatever he has right now in his soul, elements of it will kind of take forever to get rid of. But he's a human being who's young enough. He's 38, I think, and could actually start some sort of a process. But wow, that would be one of the things to applaud. In the show right before this, we were joined by Nikos, who was a Marxist university lecturer 10 years ago or so. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if he ever got Owen Jones level, by the way. So don't want to.
Well, the problem, Raz, is that the Nico is an intelligent guy. These two are clearly a bit thick. I mean, as I said, if this is the opposition, really?
I think he's intelligent. That's the problem. I think he is an intelligent person. He knows very well what he's doing. I mean, this kind of stuff, this kind of crap takes, a lot of takes ability to come up with. It's and the level of I'm gonna do this specific thing that we know the Palestinians, this was what they did, and I'm gonna do this around the allegations of 2 cases of rape. Again, if they happen, they absolutely are horrible, and the perpetrators will pay. But this is not an unintelligent human being. And another point, Marco, that you made about protests and when they protest, there's a reason, and we see this with Maryam here. They don't support the people fighting against Iran. Why would they protest for them? If anybody, they would protest for the Iranian regime. I mean, they are protesting for the Iranian proxies, and they're doing videos in favor of the Iranian proxies. So yeah, people who support the Palestinians, they're inconsistent, not when they don't protest in favor of Iranian women. They're inconsistent, for example, when Owen Jones claims to be a supporter of Ukraine, which I don't understand how you can support Ukraine on the one hand and the Palestinians on the other. And we've spoken about that before. Jonathan, I see that you have something to say.
Yeah, the difference between Jones and Nikos, interestingly, I see Jones now lives in Athens or is visiting Athens, so maybe they're not that different, but no, of course they're very different. But the main difference is that Nikos was a truth seeker when he was a Marxist. Nikos was genuinely in a search for the truth. I don't think that's the case for Mr. Jones. The fact is, he doesn't push back. He doesn't have anything challenging to raise on this doctor. He already knows what's true. He knows that the Jews are bad and the Gazans are saints. He knows that. So in that sense, I think he's very, very different. He's very intelligent. I agree. He knows what he's doing. He's more a Tui than a Peter Keating. But I don't. Well, it could be. There's free will. There could be redemption. But so long as you're not a truth seeker, how could there be redemption for you? How could you ever reach the truth if you're not interested in the truth?
All right, let's listen to a bit more. We're not going to make it through the whole thing. Even if we didn't have the Fountainhead Book Club, I don't know if we could stomach it. It is evening. I'd like to have some sort of an appetite when it's dinner time. So let's listen to a bit more.
And what did it create after that? A massive mess. Women have been when the Afghanistan case, for example, created more opportunity for Afghan women, but still the mess is women is in most precarious position now. There is lack of support, and this dismisses the idea that what women from this context actually want, just assuming that our liberal thoughts will be should embedded in the society, and imperial feminism haven't learned from that.
So women want to be oppressed. That's what I got from that. Anybody, did I miss something there? We're coming at it with our liberal perspective on what women in those societies want without actually asking them. Did I misinterpret anything?
You miss coherence and logic, but it was absent.
All right, should we listen to more? I just had to stop at that.
History. It have been repeated break record, doing the same mistake, justifying violence, creating violence, and the idea that we will save brown women from brown men. And you see it in the case of rape. And I'm sorry to say that's the uncomfortable truth, that when it's a brown woman accused of raping a white woman, it will make it to media. They will be outraged. But when the idea that a brown woman is raped by Israeli soldier, it doesn't. It is kind of questionable. The resources is unreliable. And that's have been through the whole history, and it's very dominant in the feminist movement. And they are not learning from that, especially within the Palestinian situation. Instead of understanding what's happening, they completely dismiss it as casualty of war. And that's the main idea that they are promoting. It have been.
Again, she keeps talking about they. Who are they? This, I haven't heard a single name of one of these feminists mentioned. And of course, the interviewer isn't really. This is not a hardball interview. This is not. He's not. Asking all the tough questions there. Daniel, how far into the video are we?
Almost half.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right. So we're not going to make it, people. Unfortunately, if you want to see part two, let us know in the chat, and we still won't do it. Sorry, we have our limits. Jonathan, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Well, in a few minutes, she will say that both Palestinian women and children have been raped. That we have alluded to that. So children have also been raped, as if raping women is not enough to blame the Jews. They also need to rape children. This whole thing is a conspiracy, as we started, and we should also reiterate that they end with the genocide thing as well, which is also a conspiracy theory. All of these things are not founded in reality. They don't even feel like they need. They just say that a woman has been raped, you have to believe her. So I can make up a woman, imaginary woman, doesn't have a name, it exists somewhere in Gaza, and she was raped. And now we have to have sympathy for all the thousands of women that are being constantly raped, and the children and all, were also raped by the Nazi Israeli soldiers. Were just it's just unbelievable. No decent human being could ever believe that, could ever take these things. And I guess that's the reason why Mr. Jones is the person who's interviewing here. I don't believe that would even Piers Morgan give her an interview? Well, he would give her an interview,
probably.
But he would be much more, I think, aggressive in his interviewing style than Mr. Jones.
No decent human being appeared on that video.
This is where we are.
Well, these people are a bunch of racist. I mean, just talking about brown people and what color are Israelis? They haven't got a color. They're transparent. And using the scandal language is totally dishonest. Ignoring the facts is totally dishonest. And the way they're trying to make up an argument which is not really there is so depressing. And never questioning things, never wondering what's the cause. What causes A, what causes B, what's behind it. None of that kind of search for truth, but they seem to have their own truths. She keeps talking about truth, but she couldn't see it if it hit her on the face. And all these people are actually, she's a lecturer, as Jonathan said earlier on. And her article, if you read it on Al Jazeera, is as incoherent, all based on images, based on experiences of made up people. It's just laughable. They're trying to make an argument by pulling emotional strings, and that's it. There's nothing behind it.
The whole article is driven by emotionalism. And the one aspect that we probably haven't got to in the course of covering this is just the fact that they criticize the throwing around of anti-Semitism as a means of shutting down the conversation. And at one point, she says, when talking about the October 7th rapes in Israel, the people who question those are like accused of being rape apologists, anti-Semitic, or pro-Hamas. Well, yes, and yes. Legitimately so, because that is exactly what you are if you belittle and ignore the facts that occurred on that day, and then you transpose and project them, or the echo of them, onto imaginary cases the other way around, just to make yourself feel better in terms of who your victims and are in the reality.
And if you want to have a laugh, later on in the video, Owen Jones gives a great example of lack of logic by talking about a certain percentage of people are gay, therefore part of the people killed in the retaliation are gay, therefore Israel is anti-gay. It's like, what is it? The gays see something shining in the sky, so go out and get attracted by it, and they're killed. I mean, what the hell is this? I mean, honestly, the whole thing is just totally lacks any kind of logic and any kind of thinking.
Yeah, and it is consistent with kind of the left-wing approach. I mean, people like Owen Jones have been so dedicated to their anti-Semitic propaganda for the last 5 months, and we forget that they also hate white people while being white, and that's so the brown the point about brown people is it's a special one because Israelis do come in different skin colors, but if you want to if pointing out that they're Jews is not bad enough, let's also say that they're fighting against brown people. It's be a difficult sell to say that all Israelis are white, but
and that's probably he's gone to Athens because he wants to become brown himself, probably. And ignoring the fact that we are in a climate crisis, so he's genociding the climate by flying there, isn't it?
We don't know that he flew. Maybe he walked or took a rhapsody. Guys, thanks. Sorry again for going so long and for Jesus this topic. Somebody said, yeah, Kirsten said, thanks for watching this so we don't have to. I mean, that's what we usually do. Unfortunately, this time you did have to because we put about half of it, put you through about half of it. All right, guys. I hope we can recover and talk about the Fountainhead. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, guys. We'll be back here with the Daily Objective and the reality show tomorrow. We'll see you then.